Welcome to the Deep Dive. We pull the threads of complex issues, look closely at the source material you send us, and make sure you walk away with the insights that really matter.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're doing a really fascinating deep dive. It's where, ancient religious principles meet the super fast reality of our digital lives. We're looking into the theological boundaries around interactions, specifically friendships, between non-mahram men and women.
Right, those individuals who aren't closely related, so potential marriage partners.
Exactly. And we're focusing particularly on how these principles apply online, online chats, DMs, social media.
It's a crucial area.
Our aim today is pretty clear. We want to get the theological basis for these rules, figure out the specific risks the sources point to in online settings, and then lay out the guidelines for permissible communication online.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, this is vital because, digital tools give us this level of privacy and speed that can just blur traditional lines almost instantly.
Right.
So to really get the application, we have to start with the foundational stance in the sources.
And that stance is, well, it's pretty unambiguous, isn't it? That sort of conventional Western idea of just being friends between non-mahram people.
Yeah.
It's generally seen as not permissible, and crucially, it doesn't matter if it's online or offline.
That's the core rule, and what's really interesting is the reason behind it. The sources really stress it's not about, not trusting people's immediate intentions. It actually comes from what they call a profound understanding of human nature. The whole structure is really about protecting against fitna temptation.
Fitna, right?
Yeah, recognizing those subtle ways, often unexpected ways, emotions can get stirred up and maybe lead to actions that aren't pleasing to Allah.
And that idea, that recognition of human fallibility, that's where modesty comes in so strongly, isn't it? We see it right there in the Quran.
Absolutely, that's the bedrock. The instruction for both men and women to lower their gaze and guard their chastity.
Found in Surah An-Nur.
Exactly, verses 30 and 31. That's like the primary firewall, if you will.
So lowering the gaze. When we bring that online, where a lot of interaction is just text, it has to mean more than just literally not looking, right? What do the sources say about that digital modesty?
Oh, it expands quite a bit. It really covers emotional and intellectual modesty.
Okay.
So online, lowering the gaze means you're kind of constantly guarding your heart, your mind from inappropriate engagement, even if it's just words on a screen.
So it's internal.
Very much. It includes being careful about the content you look at online, and crucially, the intention you have when you communicate with someone non-mahram. It's a proactive thing.
Right.
It's not just avoiding a profile picture, maybe. It's about controlling the thoughts that might follow or avoiding stuff that stirs up the wrong feelings.
That internal discipline, that naturally leads to the rules about proximity, physical, and now virtual. And this is where I think it gets really interesting, connecting this ancient concept to a modern DM. We're talking about Khulwah.
Yes, Khulwah. The strict prohibition against seclusion, a non-mahram man and woman being alone together. The Prophet Muhammad's warning is very clear, often cited. No man is alone with a woman, but the third of them is Satan.
That's a powerful warning about privacy. But how do scholars argue that applies when, there's just a screen between people?
So this is where we get the modern term, virtual Khulwah.
Virtual Khulwah, okay.
The sources argue that things like private one-on-one chats, DMs, these extended personal online conversations, they actually create the exact conditions of seclusion. You're electronically cut off, away from others seeing you.
The screen becomes the closed room, essentially.
Pretty much. And in that private space, inhibitions can drop really fast. A conversation can easily slide from something necessary like work into personal stuff.
Yeah.
And that environment is precisely where that third person, Satan, is said to whisper temptations.
Yeah.
The privacy itself creates a risky kind of emotional closeness.
So just to clarify, the main issue is the private setting itself. Maybe even more than the initial content. The risk is the environment it creates.
Exactly. The environment is the potential gateway. And this links straight back to the Quranic warning about secrecy.
In Surah An-Nisa.
Yes, the warning against taking secret companions of the opposite sex. It just reinforces this need for interactions to stay open, formal, and ideally public, not hidden and emotionally loaded. It's all about preventing a relationship that starts to mimic marriage outside of it.
Okay, let's shift a bit. Many people might say, look, we're just friends. Section 3 in the source material gets into this nuance. What's the risk of seeking emotional benefits from these kinds of relationships?
Right, and this is where the ruling shows its depth, I think. It's not always assuming, deliberate exploitation. The risk is more about deriving these impermissible emotional benefits.
Impermissible emotional benefits.
Yeah, things that should really only exist within marriage.
Can you give some examples of what those look like online? Because they can be quite subtle.
They are very subtle, and that's the danger, really. It could be things like finding an emotional confidant, sharing your deepest secrets or fears, or constantly seeking validation from them, affirmation, or receiving affection, emotional support that then leads to a deeper attachment, one that's considered haram, forbidden.
So you're basically channeling that deep human need for connection into a relationship that Islamically isn't structured for it.
Precisely. It's structurally unsound and, from a spiritual perspective, problematic.
And why are those specific emotional benefits off limits outside marriage? It seems quite strict to some.
Well, the strictness is generally understood through two main ideas. First, protecting the marriage bond itself.
Right.
If that deep emotional intimacy, sharing vulnerability, seeking validation, if that's regularly found somewhere else, it potentially weakens the foundation of a marriage or undermines an existing one.
That makes sense.
And second, maybe even more significantly, it's about spiritual integrity. When someone habitually turns to a non-mahram person for their deepest comfort or validation or help with their emotional state, they're subtly shifting where they place their reliance. The sources suggest that seeking that kind of deep dependence outside the lines Allah set is a kind of spiritual misalignment. It can take focus away from reliance on God.
Wow, that's a powerful way to frame it. Not just social risk, but spiritual. Changes the stakes.
It really does. And that's why these unregulated online friendships are sometimes explicitly described as following the footsteps of Satan.
Right, the warning in the Quran.
Quran 24.21, yeah. It warns that following those footsteps leads towards immorality and wrongdoing. So the boundary is set right at the beginning, that seemingly harmless private chat, because the path from casual text to deep emotional connection is seen as potentially very quick and hard to undo.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the prohibitions, the risks. Let's pivot to the practical side. Islam doesn't demand, total separation. People need to communicate for work, for study.
Absolutely. It's necessary.
So for you listening, if you need to communicate online with a non-mahram colleague or classmate, what are those strict boundaries the sources lay out for permissible interaction? There are 5 main ones, right?
Yes, this is the framework for when interaction is necessary but needs to stay within proper bounds.
Okay.
First, it's necessity. The communication must be for a legitimate required purpose. A work project, an academic question, a community task. If it's just social or emotional chatting, it's outside these bounds.
Got it. Necessary purpose. What's second?
Second is formality. This really addresses the tone, which, as we know, can slip so easily online.
Definitely.
The tone needs to be kept formal, respectful, strictly professional, avoiding any language that hints at casual closeness. Third, tied to this, is modesty.
Modesty in speech.
Yes, both people have to avoid anything flirtatious, suggestive, or overly familiar.
So let's get practical here. Does that mean things like emojis, or lot of exclamation points, or even casual phrases like, hey, got the notes? Are those generally out, even if the intent isn't bad?
Based on the sources we looked at, generally yes. The focus is really on removing ambiguity and keeping that emotional distance.
Okay.
So emojis, loads of exclamation marks, terms of endearment, even ones common in some cultures, they're usually seen as potentially blurring those lines of formality and modesty.
Right.
The communication should ideally be functional, concise, focused only on the necessary topic, like, please find the report attached is fine, hope you're having a great day, might be crossing the line into the overly familiar.
That clarity is really helpful, especially for digital workspaces. What are the last 2 guidelines?
Fourth is the idea of a public forum. Whenever it's possible, the communication should happen in a group setting.
Like a team chat.
Exactly. Or a public forum, maybe a group email where others are copied. This directly counteracts that risk of virtual Khulwah, private seclusion. If it absolutely has to be one-on-one, the necessity needs to be very clear and strong.
That's a really strong practical guardrail. It applies that third-person principle by having others potentially observe.
It does. And the fifth, final rule is brevity. Keep interactions concise to the point.
Avoid lingering.
Right. Don't let them stretch into unnecessary back and forth chats. Now, this one can be tricky with complex projects, obviously.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. What if a task genuinely requires a longer discussion? Do the sources allow for that?
They don't really offer a blanket exception like, oh, it's fine if it's complex. Instead, the emphasis is that even when the conversation has to be longer due to necessity,
Okay.
the formality, the modesty, the focus on the task must be maintained even more rigorously. If you need frequent interaction, you're urged to constantly check your intention, make sure necessity is still the only driver. Brevity still applies in the sense of using the most efficient communication possible.
Okay, so vigilance is key, even in necessary prolonged interaction.
Constant vigilance.
So what does this all mean? If we pull together everything from, Surah An-Nur's foundation to this idea of virtual Khulwah, the big picture is that this Islamic framework is intensely protective.
Absolutely. It's clearly designed to protect the spiritual and emotional health of individuals and really the moral fabric of the community.
Right.
It explicitly pushes away from those informal, emotionally driven friendships, which the sources clearly see as risky, and towards interaction that is purposeful, necessary, and keeps those clear, respectful, non-intimate boundaries.
It really feels like a structure built on preemption, recognizing how easy it is for emotional closeness to develop, especially now, when it's literally just a click away.
That really is the core insight, I think. The ultimate goal is safeguarding the sanctity of the heart and the purity of one's faith. And given how invisible and easy intimacy can feel online, well, it raises a really important question for you, the listener, to think about. How much of your own digital communication, maybe even the stuff that feels professional, is truly driven by necessity? And how much might be, perhaps subtly, seeking those emotional benefits that these rules are actually designed to protect you from?
That is a deeply relevant question for anyone trying to navigate today's digital world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Islamic boundaries for online interaction.
My pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.